Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Troy Smith, the host of The Troy Smith Show here, presented to you by Rare.us, and I'd like to be the first to welcome you to our show. When I first started this journey in political media just 3 years ago, I never thought that I would end up where I am today, talking to you, millions of our readers here at Rare.us. When I started this journey, I started with my own website called LaunchLiberty.com. And through that site, I was able to reach millions of Americans and eventually ascend to where I am now with Rare. I want you to know this because I want you to know where I come from and where this show is going to dedicate its attention. From the beginning, my goal has not been to elevate Republicans, not to elevate Democrats, but to elevate the truth. In Maryland, even though it was not politically smart for me to go around attacking Republicans who failed to represent the values of their voters, I did so anyway, because I stand for you, not for the politicians. Over the course of my time in political media, I have learned unbelievable things about the process and the way that things work. And through this show, it is my hope to walk you through things as I see them, so that you can experience the same things that I experience, being exposed to the political aspects of this country that most people never see. The truth is, when it comes to where I've come from, I come from a state, Maryland, which is so backwards in its ideology and its political followings that most of the things that occur there would just bewilder most of you out there in the rest of America. What happens in Maryland is equivalent to what happens in California or any other place that Democrats are able to get a hold. You see a decay, a rot, and all of a sudden it's uninhabitable. This is occurring in Chicago. This is occurring in St. Louis. This is occurring in Baltimore. It occurs all over the country. Now, most of us want to blame the political class for this, and of course, we'd be granted in doing so. But the problem is not necessarily with the politicians. See, a lot of people don't look at the full equation. And the job of the media for so long, and the reason that we had such respect for the media, is because they held the powerful accountable. But in recent decades, that force that was supposed to be used to highlight the corruption, highlight the lies, highlight the problems, has been instead turned into a lapdog advertisement. And that's what it is. I won't lie to you, folks. I have been urged time and time again to choose the dollar over the truth. And every single time I've turned it down, because I know that the only reason that you would tune into a broadcast like this or go to a site like Rare.us is because you are interested in the truth. You are interested in bucking the information that is being presented to you by people who feel that they control you. And for that, you have found yourself at the Troy Smith Show. And we want to welcome you with open arms. Now, I won't lie. I'm a registered Republican, and if you went really based on my political beliefs, I pretty much align with the Republican Party. However, I do recognize that within the Republican Party, there is a tremendous, if not an overwhelming majority of politicians who don't care about the people, who don't care about the country, only about themselves and their own bank accounts. We are not going to hold back on this show when it comes to those Republicans, but we are also not going to shy away from the blatant anti-American fraud that is the Democrat Party and the things that they continue to push. I might not be perfect. I might not be as unbiased as some would like me to be, but I'm not going to misrepresent who I am and what this show is about. This show is about truth. This show is about respecting the United States of America and hopefully one day seeing it return to the country that we know and love. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Troy Smith Show. Ladies and gentlemen, one of the things that I loved covering, and I still love covering more than anything out there, is Joe Biden and just videos of him kind of walking around, videos of him kind of being who he is. And it's amazing to me because we have these bands playing Hail to the Chief, we have Congress shaking his hand, and all of these people, Republicans and Democrats, are ignoring the fact that this guy can't speak. He can't speak a coherent sentence. He struggles to walk from point A to point B. In fact, he pretty much constantly has to be pointed, no, Joe, go that way, go that way. How many times do we see him end a speech and he's looking around like, where do I go? He has no idea where he's supposed to go. So just last week on Friday, we posted an article that I think this one, I could be wrong here, but I think we had about 80,000 to 100,000 hits on this. It was just huge. Biden started whispering and screaming at the same time at the White House. He was speaking to the U.S. Conference of Mayors. They have a winter meeting, and I guess they have a summer, or maybe they have one every season. I'm not really sure what the purpose of them going, to the White House is. Maybe it's just to pat themselves on the back, probably. But you have this hilarious ceremony where these people are trying to pat themselves on the back. They're trying to legitimize this thing and say, oh, look at me, I'm at the White House. Meanwhile, the president is yelling and screaming into the microphone to the point where the audience really sounds shocked. I mean, you don't hear a lot of applause. You don't hear really a lot of people going like, yeah, we're so happy for this. You really get the feeling that they're sitting there like, wow, And keep in mind, when it comes to the Biden coverage, we're not like slouches here at Rare. I'll have you guys know that at one point on MSN.com, before Jim Acosta ran his hit piece segment, and we might even have to show that segment just to show you guys where what we've been doing here at Rare. But because of Jim Acosta's segment on us and our coverage of President Joe Biden, MSN went ahead and canceled us. But prior to that, for 6 months, we were the leading outlet in terms of coverage of Joe Biden on MSN.com, which is one of the biggest news sites in the world. That once Jim Acosta ran his segment, actually we got a tip that somebody at the White House actually phoned the president of Microsoft, and the president of Microsoft put out an order that Rare.us, along with several other outlets, would no longer be allowed on MSN. So, I didn't attack. Listen. Politically, there's a lot of things about Biden that are very questionable, and I think the House investigations have kind of revealed, look, there's serious questions as to the money he's received from China. There's serious questions as to the money this guy and his family have received from Ukraine. And yet at the same time, I don't think that these attacks politically are the best thing against Joe Biden. I think, honestly, the best thing that we can do if we want to stand up to Biden and the Democrat Party fascism is to simply show what these people are. Let's take a look real quick at Joe Biden on Friday, screaming at his audience, going like volume up here, volume down here, no control. And we'll even throw in a clip of him kind of struggling to read the teleprompter as well. Let's watch that.
And by the way, guess what? I love it. They said, you're spending all that money. Guess what? That's money saved. Billions of dollars the federal government does not have to pay. Billions and billions of dollars. That's a fact. By the way, and how much it cost to make that insulin the guy invented didn't want to patent it because he wanted it available for everybody. And how much it cost to make it? $10. T-E-N. Package it in every way, add all the costs you could possibly think, another $2, maybe $3. And they're charging $400 for it? Come on, man. No, I'm serious.
As you can see, ladies and gentlemen, they want you to believe that this guy is capable of conducting the duties of the office of the President of the United States. Now, I work quite a bit, and I'm saying, I did the timesheet for a little while, and the numbers, sometimes you look at it and you're like, oh my God. I think that Joe Biden would struggle to do my job. Not only do I think Joe Biden would struggle to do my job, I think he would struggle to do most people's jobs. I doubt that this dude works 20 hours a week. And I say that because there's no way that he's calling people and world leaders and negotiating high-intensity deals. This dude can't get out of his own way. He can't speak a coherent sentence. There is absolutely no way that he is conducting the duties of the office of the President of the United States. What you instead have is the Democratic Party kind of implementing their legions throughout the White House and throughout government right now in order to try to, have a, what do they call it? A deep state for all you conspiracy theorists out there. They're creating the new deep state, and they're using the empty shell of Joe Biden to do that. And that's because President Trump did a number on these people. He did a number on the established order of government and highlighting people like Peter Strzok and Lisa Page. I mean, that's something that amazes me to this day, ladies and gentlemen. We're talking about two people within the FBI who were obviously Clinton supporters, who were emailing each other back and forth talking about an insurance plan. In case Donald Trump would ever win the election, we need to have an insurance plan so that we can make sure that he can't stop us from doing what we want to do. So, you explain to me how that is law enforcement or anything but just politically motivated garbage. And it's lawlessness. And, look, Trump did a number on these people, but at the end of the day, he walked away after 2020. Now, regardless of the situation that led to him walking away, they were successfully able to get him out of office. We're talking about a president of the United States. For my entire life, and I was only born in 2000, so we're talking George W. Bush and Barack Obama, what the president said went, especially during Obama's term. Anything Obama said was immediately gospel, was immediately taken by the media and put into stone as God's words. That is how they treated Obama. Yet when it came to Donald Trump, the president is not really that powerful. And in fact, it became about Nancy Pelosi and how powerful Congress is. Then as soon as Nancy Pelosi loses Congress and it goes back into the hands of Republicans, Congress is powerless again. You see how that works? So when the Republicans win anything, whether it's Congress, the Senate, the presidency, we get to see all the weaknesses of that branch. And we get to see, the Congress has the power to do this and stop them, and Congress has the power to do this, and the Supreme Court has the power to do this. But when the Democrats take control, they're all powerful, they can do whatever they want. Now, whether that's a result of the Republicans being failures and not understanding how government works, maybe, or whether that's, kind of par for the course, rigged establishment game, as Trump pointed out. I happen to think that it's a rigged establishment game. And the Republicans, most of them, seem to fight with their hands tied behind their back. And you look at their donors, they're pretty much the same as the Democrats. Let's take a look at Nikki Haley. I talked about this. And by the way, folks, if you wanted to check, we're going to be doing as many of these shows as we can. We'll try to keep it as up to date on a daily basis as we can. But you can also catch me on Roger Stone's show, The Stone Zone, as a co-host every single day at 8 p.m. on Roger's channel. We'll put that up on the screen so people can see that. You can check that out every day. But as we're talking about, Trump going forward, and we're talking about 2024, and we're talking about all these things kind of coming together, we have to realize this is not really a battle between Trump and Biden, because Biden's not a legitimate president. One, he did not get 80 million votes. Look, the FBI can break down this door right now. The CIA can tap all my cell phones. They could say whatever they want. They could say I'm a terrorist for saying it. We all know Joe Biden didn't get 80 million votes. We know it because there weren't Biden signs. There's no way that they could justify that. And even if you just take Biden out of it, look at Trump. Has there ever been a president that got 10 million more votes from the first time he ran to the second time he ran and lost? No, there hasn't been. And it didn't happen. I'm sorry, but Trump won the last election. He did. We all know he did. And if you don't think that, you either think that because you're part of the Biden administration, or you're a lifelong Democrat who just wants to support them, or you're living in delusion. Those are the two options. President Joe Biden is an illegitimate president. And if you want evidence of that, all you have to know, look at Russia. Look at what we're told. Look what Jen Psaki, the lovely Jen Psaki, says about Vladimir Putin. He takes elections by force. He kills his political opposition. He uses corruption. What did Joe Biden do upon taking office? Well, I'll tell you what he did, because I was there. I saw it with my own two eyes. He brought in the National Guard and the military into Washington, D.C. They walled off all of the establishment government buildings, and they sat behind guarded fences for 6 months. They sat behind guarded fences for months on end after the election because they could. because that was a militarized takeover of the United States. And that's never happened before. There have never been tanks rolling down the street after the election. The only reason it happened is because they saw what happened on January 6th. And I'm not talking about what happened at the Capitol. I'm talking about the mass of people. Why do you think the FBI was in the crowd on January 6th and stoking people to go into the Capitol building? Why do you think they were doing that? Because they wanted to make sure that those people would never, ever come back to Washington, D.C. again. Because for the first time in American history, the people in D.C. who sat there for years and years and years, bankrupting us, calling us white trash, calling us garbage, taxing us to oblivion, sending our children to die in foreign wars while they made money off of our jobs and our industry leaving this country. Those same people, for the first time in their lives, looked out the window and saw you. They saw the American people, the people that they had been robbing for decades, and it scared them to death. It scared them to death because consequence showed up. And while they had their little Fedsurrection and had the FBI bring people into the building while they were contesting the results of the election and then said, oh, well, they were trying to stop the counting of the votes. Well, they were listening to the arguments to not certify when the protesters broke in. So that's illogical. It doesn't make any sense because the feds did it. Because the people that were there were not violent protesters. They were legitimate First Amendment protected protesters who went there to send a message to the Washington, D.C. establishment that had been attacking their president for the last 4 years. You're not going to steal this. And caught up in the moment, they were able to get enough people to go inside the Capitol to throw the whole thing off. The people did nothing wrong on January 6th. The establishment simply got scared, paying the consequences for what they've done to this country for the last, 100 years. The people will always have the ultimate power. And it doesn't matter how many laws, how many rules, how many regulations come out of Washington, D.C., nothing will change that fact. Nothing will change the fact that the people are in control of this nation. And if we start to realize that, we can move forward as a nation. And if we fail to realize that, we may eventually allow the political class that has such disdain for this country to assume absolute authoritarian and total control over our everyday lives. It's our duty as Americans to ensure that that never, ever happens. And that's part of the reason we're here on the Troy Smith Show. So, before we get into the next segment, folks, I want to encourage you. We actually have a sponsor here. So believe it or not, somebody has actually chosen to sponsor our show. Now, I'm not going to lie to you. We didn't get any money up front. So, we need you, folks. But luckily, we have something that I think you guys are going to be able to use. So if you know anything about my reporting, you know that I talk about the former White House press secretary, Jen Psaki, quite a bit. We're going to put her picture up on the screen so you guys can see her. So you see the beautiful red hair. You see the beautiful eyes. You see the beautiful figure. Everything about this woman is heavenly. I mean, she is a heavenly woman. But that's to me. And they say that beauty is in the eye of the beholder. So I've talked to all kind of people about Jen Psaki over the years, and none of them seem to have the same opinion of her that I do. And it breaks my heart, really, because she's my Jenny. You know what I mean? So anyway, folks, if you found yourself in a situation with Jen Psaki where she, needed, whatever, and, you're a gentleman and you couldn't achieve the results that you needed sexually, we would need, you would need a helping hand. And that's what I have for you guys today. It's called My Dr. Hank. And that's right. If you had to, gun against your head with Jen Psaki, My Dr. Hank would come through to you. That's how powerful this stuff is. In fact, if you went across the country and you grounded up the 10 ugliest women you could possibly find, I guarantee you that My Dr. Hank would still come through to you. And though Jen Psaki may be in some of those lists for you, I have to say that must be politically motivated, because if you took that woman, and let's put her up on the screen again. If you took that woman and you took away the liberal ideology and you took away like the fascism and the like, let's kill everybody. If you took that away, she's actually really hot. And I know that people are laughing, whatever. You can laugh at me all you want. My point is, even if you think she's ugly, in fact, the uglier you think Jen is, the more you should want this My Dr. Hank product. Go get this, ladies and gentlemen. Go get this just in case Jen comes a-knocking and you need what you need to get through the event, if you know what I'm saying. Ladies and gentlemen, now for our last segment, I'd like to get into some of the independent candidates that are supposedly running for president and kind of any impact that they would have on the 2024 election. When I was in Maryland, one of the main topics of my investigations was routinely Maryland Governor Larry Hogan. And the reason that I covered Larry Hogan in such depth is because I had been a supporter of Hogan's in 2014. I think most Republicans in Maryland were, even people that I know that now support Donald Trump. Everyone was kind of fooled by Larry Hogan in 2014. And then when, he got reelected in 2018 and he started doing some things like red flag gun laws, prior to that, everyone started kind of being like, what's going on here? Larry Hogan wasn't the Republican or the conservative that we thought he was. He was kind of turning towards being a Democrat. And then by 2020, when the pandemic hit, this guy was full vaccine, full mask, sending the sheriff's department to people's businesses and having them arrested and fined. And he kind of went full Gretchen Whitmer or full Andrew Cuomo. By the way, Gretchen Whitmer has got to be one of the most beautiful women. Oh my God. I mean, Gretchen Whitmer, can we put her up on the screen? She's crazy, but there's something about the craziness that is just like unbelievable. I think we're going to have a real problem in this country where there's going to be some kind of like really bad authoritarian like Gretchen Whitmer, but that, significantly better looking than her, but that's going to kind of like hypnotize everybody. And sometimes, you wonder that about some of the dictators throughout history. Like, these guys had to have some level of charm, you know what I mean? I wonder who's going to be like the Manchurian candidate there's going to be some like supermodel, I guarantee you. Something's going to happen along those lines going forward. But anyway, Hogan really went full Whitmer. He went full Cuomo. He went full Newsom. And coming from claiming he was a conservative or a Republican is pretty. It's a drastic change. So I started investigating the people around Larry Hogan. And all of a sudden, I found Judge Jonathan Newell. Judge Jonathan Newell was a Hogan appointee that was accused of filming small children being naked in the bathroom of his ranch in Maryland. And when the FBI kind of closed in on this guy and eventually raided his home in September of 2021, they found Judge Jonathan Newell dead of a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Then Hogan, former Chief of Staff Roy McGrath, disappeared and was on the FBI's most wanted list. And they had even started speculating that he ran off to Korea or different countries around the world. He made the international fugitive list. Roy McGrath then died of a gunfire exchange with federal authorities in Tennessee after a manhunt was underway for several weeks in 2022, or it might have even been 2023. So all of these people that have run-ins with Larry Hogan, know a lot about Larry Hogan, disappear. And I would compare it to what we see with Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton in Arkansas. In fact, I would almost call Larry Hogan, if he had a wife that spoke English, we would call him the Maryland version of Bill Clinton. That's really what he is. And for folks to really understand where Larry Hogan comes from, he was Bob Ehrlich. So Bob Ehrlich was governor of Maryland when I was a very small child, and we're talking early 2000s. Larry Hogan was the appointment secretary for Bob Ehrlich, meaning that anybody that wanted any government position appointed by Governor Bob Ehrlich during his time as governor had to go through Larry Hogan. Not only that, but Larry Hogan's father was in Congress and was one of the main Republicans who went against Richard Nixon. So we're talking about a family with a history of political ties, a family with a history of being involved in some of the shadiest aspects of politics. And now, along with RFK and several others, Hogan is now kind of hinting on the idea that he might run for president under a potential no labels party. Now, interestingly enough, this party has also been given ballot access in Maryland and at least 20 other states. So while everybody's focused on RFK Jr., the real problem is Larry Hogan and the No Labels Party. And we don't have much time here left, folks, on our first episode of the Troy Smith Show. So I want to make sure that you guys know you can go on Facebook and you can find us under Rare America, Faves USA, Rare Media, Rare News, Rare Politics. We have several pages. You could just look up Rare and you'll eventually find us. You can find us on Twitter. You can find us on TikTok. You can find us on YouTube, where you're probably watching this now. You can find us on Rumble. You can find us basically on every social media platform. I also encourage all of you to go to rare.us, where you can check out the editorial that we produce every single day, up to date. And I would also encourage all of you to hit the subscribe button, give us a like, and give us a comment to what you think about the show. As we move forward, we will take advice from the audience. If you guys want to see certain things done a certain way, we will certainly listen to you. And if you want to try to troll us, well, we'll laugh at that too. So whatever you guys want to do. But as we move forward, folks, RFK Jr. does not really pose a threat, or the threat that any of us thought that he would, either as a Democrat or an independent. I think the real problem is Larry Hogan and the No Labels Party. And it would not surprise me one bit to see Larry Hogan, Chris Christie, Sununu, and the rest of these rhinos line up behind a potential Nikki Haley, or maybe even recruiting somebody like billionaire Mark Cuban to run for them. Because ultimately, for Larry Hogan, who lived with a pedophile, stepping out into the spotlight of the presidential race is probably not the best idea. Now, if you're wondering what I'm talking about, in the early 90s, Larry Hogan lived with an individual named Kevin Lee Hall. We know that Kevin Lee Hall lived with Larry Hogan in Upper Marlboro, Maryland, because it was talked about in the media at the time, and we had the Baltimore Sun article in which it's talked about. In the 90s, when Hogan was running for Congress, Kevin Lee Hall, a person who was living at Hogan's home, kidnapped a 17-year-old boy at gunpoint, took him to a motel, and forced the kid to have sex with him at gunpoint. After Kevin Lee Hall was arrested for this atrocity, Ronald Gunsberger, Hogan's campaign manager, told the Baltimore Sun that Hall had been living at Hogan's residence. And in fact, he added that they didn't know whether Hall was going to continue living at the residence, even though he had just been arrested for allegedly raping a 17-year-old boy at gunpoint. This is Larry Hogan. This is who Larry Hogan is. And it's exactly why it should be the top priority of anybody who stands against pedophilia, anybody who stands against child abuse, anybody who stands against political corruption, to realize the real and existential threat that Hogan and the rest of the Republican political establishment pose to our country. And it's also why the candidacy of President Donald Trump, who has often feuded with Larry Hogan, is so important. While corruption, pedophilia, and the worst elements of human nature are often all we see in politics, Donald Trump represents the opposite. And it's exactly why millions of Americans continue to support his campaign for president, and will do so until Trump either is not able to run anymore or he wins his second term. The choice is clear, ladies and gentlemen. It's the establishment that has run the country into the ground, or the anti-establishment. And though the anti-establishment may be rough around the edges, it may be undefined in certain aspects, it's far greater than the same system that has bankrupted Americans of their emotions, their love, and their patriotism. I'm your host, Troy Smith, and I want to thank you so much for tuning into this first episode of The Troy Smith Show. We are proud to bring you this product, and as I stated before, we will continue to upload these videos on as close to a daily basis as we can possibly get. Rare.us is your source of great information. It's your source of patriotic information, and information that is based in love of the United States of America. Without this country, I would be nothing. Without this country, the world would have plunged into darkness a long time ago. And it's only by keeping that light, even if it goes dim, keeping that light aglow. As long as we continue to do that, the world will have a chance. The United States will be back. I want to thank you for tuning in. I want to encourage you to go to rare.us. And thank you, and have a beautiful night.